Rain fell in thin silver threads, tracing the rusted bars of the shelter gate. The air smelled of bleach and old straw, a scent that clung to the skin, heavy with stories that had ended too soon. Down the narrow corridor of kennels, dozens of eyes watched in silence, some pleading, some resigned. But in the last run, where the light barely reached, a single German shepherd lay motionless, his head pressed against the cold concrete floor. They called him Rex, though no one was sure if that was ever his real name. He had arrived months ago, pulled from a roadside ditch after a storm, ribs showing, paws torn raw, collar missing. The volunteers had tried everything: treats, soft words, even music, but the shepherd wouldn't move. He didn't growl, didn't bark, didn't even look up when food slid toward him. It was as if his soul had turned to stone somewhere far behind his eyes. Each day, the kennel worker named Maya lingered by his gate longer than she was supposed to. She spoke to him gently, her voice the only warmth in that sterile hallway. "It's okay," she whispered once, crouching low, her breath visible in the cold air. "You're safe now." But his tail never flicked, his ears never lifted. He simply lay there, eyes open but unreachable. Rumors drifted through the staff room that Rex had belonged to an old man who'd passed away, that he'd guarded an empty house for weeks before animal control found him. Others said he'd been dumped by the roadside when his owner moved away. No one knew which version was true. What everyone agreed on was this: the dog was waiting for someone who wasn't coming back. The shelter clock ticked on. Days folded into weeks. Dogs came and went, adopted, fostered, forgotten. But Rex stayed. He wouldn't step past the kennel door, no matter who held the leash. Even the vet, a patient man with years of experience, shook his head. He's not afraid of the world. He's afraid it'll leave him again. Then one quiet morning, the rhythm of the shelter changed. The usual chatter dimmed as a woman walked in, mid-30s, rain-soaked, clutching a crumpled photo in her hand. Her eyes were red-rimmed but determined. She moved past every kennel without looking, as if drawn by some invisible thread. When she reached the last one, she froze. The photo trembled slightly in her hand. "Rex?" she whispered. At the sound of her voice, the dog stirred, for the first time in months. A slow lift of the head, a flicker of disbelief in those amber eyes. Then a low, broken sound. Not quite a whine, not yet a bark, something caught between grief and recognition. The volunteers watched in stunned silence as the shepherd rose, trembling, and stepped forward, one paw over the line of his past, the other toward the voice that had once met home. And just like that, the silence of the shelter broke open. For weeks, Rex had been nothing but a shadow. But the moment that voice touched the air, something inside him shifted. A long, buried thread of memory snapped awake. The woman knelt by the kennel, tears glistening on her cheeks, whispering words only he could understand. "Rex, it's me, Anna." The name fluttered through his memory like smoke. At first, he didn't move. His body trembled, torn between instinct and disbelief. Anna reached a shaking hand toward the gate, her voice cracking. "I thought I lost you." The volunteers stood frozen, holding their breath as if any sound might shatter this fragile reunion. Then, slowly, Rex took one uncertain step forward. His claws clicked softly on the concrete. Anna dropped to her knees, pressing her forehead to the cold bars. Rex's nose brushed her fingers, hesitant at first, then desperate. A whimper escaped him, raw, ancient, a sound born from months of waiting and pain. He pressed his head against the gate, tail twitching weakly. Maya, the shelter worker, wiped her eyes. "She remembers her," she whispered. The vet nodded slowly. "That kind of bond, it doesn't die." They led Anna into the kennel. The leash lay coiled on the floor, useless now. When she opened her arms, Rex stepped into them. The moment was silent, except for the sound of rain against the roof. His body, once rigid and scarred by fear, melted against her. That night, the shelter felt different. Even the other dogs seemed quieter, as if they knew something sacred had passed between those walls, a reunion the world had nearly forgotten to deliver. Outside, the storm faded to mist. Inside, beneath flickering light, a dog who had refused the world finally came home. The drive home was long and quiet. Rex lay curled on the back seat, eyes darting toward every passing shadow. Anna kept glancing at him in the mirror, her lips trembling into half-smiles. "We're going home, buddy," she whispered, though part of her feared he no longer believed in such things. When they reached the small cottage at the edge of town, Rex hesitated at the door. The scent of the wooden porch, the echo of his own nails, everything familiar, yet strange. He stepped inside cautiously, ears alert. The living room still held his old toys, faded with time, placed exactly where he'd left them. Anna had never moved them. She'd kept the house waiting, like a shrine. At first, Rex wouldn't sleep. He paced at night, searching the corners as if afraid of vanishing again. Sometimes he'd startle awake from dreams, panting, eyes wide. Anna would sit beside him on the floor, murmuring softly, her hand resting near his paw, but never forcing touch. "You're safe. You're home." Days passed. Small things changed. He began eating again, slow, deliberate bites. He followed her from room to room, not out of dependence, but quiet reassurance. And one morning, when she opened the door to the yard, he stepped into the grass and lifted his face toward the rising sun. For the first time since that storm, Rex wagged his tail. Not a full wag, just a tremor of joy, fragile and incomplete, like the first crack in a wall that had held too long. Anna smiled through tears. "We're getting there," she whispered. But healing, she would learn, was never a straight line. By mid-autumn, Rex had grown stronger, his coat thickening, his body filling out. Yet shadows still followed him. A slammed door, the rumble of thunder, even a raised voice could send him trembling beneath the table. Anna read every signal, her patience infinite. Still, she worried. One evening, the sky turned the color of bruised steel. Rain lashed against the windows, thunder cracked like splitting wood, and Rex vanished. She searched the house, calling his name, her voice rising in panic. Finally, she found him wedged behind the washing machine, shaking violently. Anna called Dr. Patel, the vet who had once treated Rex. "He's terrified," she said breathlessly. "He won't come out." Dr. Patel's voice was calm, but firm. "Don't force him. Sit near him. Talk. Let him remember that your voice means safety." So she did. She sat on the cold tile for hours, humming softly, old lullabies from the days when Rex was a pup. Slowly, the trembling eased. His breathing steadied. When she finally reached out, his head pressed into her lap, eyes still wet, but trusting again. That night, after the storm, Rex climbed onto the couch uninvited and rested his chin on her leg. She froze, then smiled. She didn't move for hours. It was the smallest gesture, but to her, it was everything.
Healing had found its rhythm. Fear, trust, repeat. And somewhere between the lightning and the quiet, a new bond was being written, one made not of ownership, but survival.
Winter arrived sharp and cruel. One morning, Rex refused his food. By afternoon, he could barely stand. Anna rushed him to the clinic, heart pounding. The vet examined him quickly. Fever, dehydration, infection. "He's weak," Dr. Patel said, frowning. "His immune system's been through too much. We'll need to keep him overnight." Anna's chest tightened. The idea of leaving him there, alone again, behind another set of bars, made her stomach twist. But she nodded. "Please, just save him." That night, she sat in her car outside the clinic, rain streaking the windshield. Inside, through the glass, she could see him lying on the table, IV attached, eyes closed. She whispered through the window, "Don't give up on me now." Hours crawled by. Near dawn, the vet came out, smiling faintly. "He's a fighter. If he makes it through tonight, he'll be okay." Anna pressed her forehead to the steering wheel, tears of exhaustion spilling freely. She had nearly lost him again, this time not to abandonment, but to the fragility of life itself. When Rex was finally released, thinner but alive, she carried him home in her arms. He lifted his head weakly, eyes meeting hers. For the first time, it wasn't fear she saw there. It was trust, complete and wordless. They had both survived something that could have broken them, and somehow that survival bound them tighter than anything before.
Spring returned like forgiveness. The air warmed and the cottage filled with the sound of wind chimes and laughter, small, ordinary miracles. Rex no longer flinched at thunder. He followed Anna into town, greeting neighbors with quiet confidence. His gait had a grace again, his eyes a light that hadn't been there in years. One evening, Anna sat on the porch steps, watching him chase the fading sun across the yard. The sight made her chest ache with something beautiful and painful all at once. When he returned, panting softly, she cupped his face and whispered, "We did it, didn't we?" He leaned into her touch, tail swaying gently. The world around them hummed. Crickets, distant traffic, the rhythm of life moving on. But in that small corner of the world, time stood still. The shepherd who had once refused to walk out of his kennel now roamed freely, his heart unchained. Anna closed her eyes, breathing in the peace she'd almost forgotten could exist. Some rescues, she realized, don't happen in one moment. They happen every day, in the patience to stay, the courage to try again, and the quiet promise that love, once lost, can always find its way home.